Okay, so let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about our teacher today. Mary has practiced meditation, yoga, and cultivated a spiritual practice for over 30 years. And in 2009, she was empowered to teach Buddha Dharma. Buddha Dharma. Sorry. Mary is based in the Los Angeles area and teaches classes, retreats, and does individual mentoring. She has taught at mindfulness at recovery centers, has co-facilitated Year to Live groups since 2008, and has a weekly Dharma class for over a decade. She also was a director at Against the Stream for 10 years. Mary completed the Buddhist chaplaincy program at the Sati Center and served as volunteer chaplain at Hollywood Presbyterian Medical Center. She also served as executive director of the Mind Body Awareness Project from 2016 to 2018. Mary sits on the boards of the Buddhist Insight Network and CLU LA, Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. Along with teaching, she continues to investigate what it means to live with an undefended heart. Fun fact, Mary has a master's degree from UCLA and worked as an archaeologist in the Middle East. More info can be found about Mary on her website, marystancavage.org. That's MaryStancavage.org. Okay, thank you all for being here with us today. I'll go ahead and put Mary on.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Thomas, for the introduction. I appreciate that. And welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. As Thomas said, we'll have a few minutes of meditation, and then we'll have some Dharma and some conversation. So I want to invite you to find a way to sit for this few minutes that will be comfortable. You can allow your eyes to close if you like. Just bring yourself into an awareness of sitting, feeling yourself supported, whether you're on a chair or a couch, a cushion, wherever you are, feel yourself supported and connected with that foundation. Bring your awareness to your breath as well, not in any way to control it, but an awareness of the body just breathing on its own. The body breathes, and we can just rest in that breath for a few moments with this breath and body awareness. If that's the breath is challenging or not available for you to connect with easily, you're welcome to stay connected to sound or physical touch, perhaps an awareness of your hand touching your leg. And just rest in the present. Staying in the present can be very challenging, and the mind takes. And so the invitation is always to come back to the present, but I invite you to pay attention to where the mind takes you, whether you're caught in planning or replaying memories or whatever's true for you. Just acknowledge that, recognizing that it can't be different from the way it is. And just returning to the present, greeting your experience with friendliness, with kindness. Really noticing the activity of the mind, whether it's restless or calm. It's not supposed to be one way or the other. You're just aware of what it is, greeting your experience with friendliness and staying present as much as you can. And for the last moment of our practice this morning, this afternoon, perhaps you can bring to mind one thing that you're grateful for, a person, a place, something mundane to be grateful for. It doesn't have to be grandiose. And see if you can just rest with that gratitude for a moment. So you can allow your eyes to open if you haven't already. And welcome again to Buddhist Recovery Network Academy. I'm excited to be here, happy to be here. Been involved or had been involved with the Buddhist Recovery Network way back in the early stages of it, and I'm really happy to see that it's still going strong and that you're all participating. And I wanted to talk this. I keep saying this morning. I know it's this afternoon, but if I say this morning, it's because it's stuck in my brain. But this afternoon, I wanted to talk about letting go of our stories because I think it's such an important topic. It's really wise to look at that. And that's kind of why I offered the instruction during our practice to pay attention to where the mind is going, if indeed it was going anywhere. If you were experiencing some calm, that's so great. And a lot of times it's a challenge, and especially when we first come into our sitting, it's the mind is going hither, thither, and yon. It's going over here, it's going over there, and there's a soundtrack that often is running and there's a soundtrack that's often running even when we're not sitting, but when we're sitting, it seems to be right in our face because there are no distractions. It's easier to see. We have the voice that's telling us we should or shouldn't. We have that committee that's telling us we should or we shouldn't. And it tends to run our life. And if we're not paying attention to it, it can be really damaging in some ways and could cause harm, or it could just be a low-grade discomfort. This running commentary about not good enough, can't do something, the story about how it's never going to work out, or this or that or the other, just, or it can be one word. I was talking to some folks a couple of weeks ago, and when they were talking about having a difficult time finding the story, I said, sometimes it's just one word: loser, fatty, something that we carry with us. Or even if it's not explicit, sometimes it's just an amorphous anxiety that kind of is just always hovering around, keeping us tracked. So these are the stories, and this is actually our conditioning. And the Buddha talked about this so much. This is, if we let go of our conditioning, we will be liberated. We're clinging to this. We're clinging to this story, not because we want to, but because it's a habitual pattern of thinking. And this conditioning, if you're a human being, you have conditioning. As soon as we're born, our life starts coming at us, and we start coping with it. Our families, our communities, our cultures, there's some systemic problem, systemic oppression. There's a lot of different messages we receive from society at large and from our personal experience. And from a very early age, we begin to develop coping mechanisms. We begin to develop ways to keep ourselves safe, to keep ourselves from hurting. And a lot of them are not necessarily the best. When I was 8, I had a very difficult, I lived in a very, I lived alone with my mom, who was mentally ill, and it was not fun. And as an 8-year-old, I began to eat. That's what I started doing. I started using food as a way to comfort myself. It wasn't a conscious decision. I didn't sit down as an 8-year-old and go, I think this will help. But it was just a self-soothing mechanism. And when I got older, I moved into drugs and alcohol as a way to deal with the discomfort that I was feeling. Again, not conscious. It was just, ooh, this makes me feel different. This keeps those experiences from showing up or staying. This is a good way to drown out whatever I'm feeling and I don't want to feel. So we get caught up in that. And the stories are this, or you're not good enough, or it's not safe, or you need to, whatever it is. If you stop for a moment and think about it, I bet you can come up with a story or two that is been a soundtrack of your life. That's been your constant companion for a while. And that inadequacy that you carry with you. And we get these messages. They're not just given to us when we were kids. We're still getting them. I watched the Fire Festival, the Netflix Fire Festival documentary a couple of maybe a month or so ago. And the one thing that came out from it for me that stood out, not the insanity of the story, but the fact of the talking about influencers when they're first publicizing the Fire Festival. For those who do not know, it was a high-end party festival that was going to be held in the Bahamas a couple of years ago, and it was just a disaster from start to finish. And when they were first publicizing the festival, they got 100 social media influencers to tweet and Instagram and Facebook about it, so that people would just be, oh my God, this is the thing I have to do. So that's what jumped out at me. It's like, influencers have existed but now it's much more sophisticated, and we're being bombarded by these messages that we have to go to this place or get this car or have this relationship or have this job. We have to, bribe colleges to get our kids into school because they have to go to these prestigious universities, and we're trapped inside these stories. And we develop these worldviews, and we have worldviews about others, and we don't question them. Or many times we don't question them. We just find ourselves falling flat so much of the time, or getting what we want and being dissatisfied, still suffering from that. And with addiction, it can be very damaging. It can cause a tremendous amount of harm, our way of dealing with these stories. Some of us get into workahol or shopaholic or sex or drugs and rock and roll, all those things, to take care of this, to manage these stories, to manage these habitual patterns. And the Buddha says, stop, stop, stop. And we stop by sitting on the cushion. We stop by being willing to stay present. We stop by turning towards our experience. I was in spent an evening with Lama Rod Owens in February. He gave a talk, and he was talking about this conditioning, and he said, this conditioning is not our fault. It's not our fault. And I think that's a really important thing to understand, but it is our responsibility to do something about it. That's how we move down the path to freedom. Freedom from addiction, freedom from all this suffering, freedom from this harm. And so practice gives us the opportunity to really look at our stories and take a step back from them, and say, oh, maybe this is just a soundtrack that I don't have to buy into, that I don't have to believe, that I can let go of. And our sitting practice allows us to stay with the emotions, the things underneath that are driving the stories that perhaps we've never ever looked at. We let go of the story of needing to be a perfectionist. Oh, that's that perfectionist stuff going on in my head. But when we're quiet and we sit on the cushion, what arises sometimes is that sense of inadequacy, or that feeling unsupported or unloved, or whatever is true for us. This practice invites us to be with that, to be with the discomfort, to be with the scary stuff. And what's also important is it's not a macho practice. It's not a thing that we tough through. Along with the cultivation of wisdom, of clear seeing, we also cultivate compassion and kindness towards our experience in order to hold the pain. Because if it wasn't painful, we wouldn't be running away from it in some way, shape, or form. We're running away from the pain, whatever it is. There's no hierarchy of pain. So what's true for one person is not true for another, but we all have this pain that we need to hold. And we do it with kindness and compassion. Harshness is a hallmark of how we treat ourselves. And so we let go of that harshness. There's guilt and there's shame and there's all these things we have to deal with. And the dual wings of awakening, of wisdom and compassion, are how we move towards that. We move towards this of seeing, oh, this is a story. This is deep conditioning. That's not my fault. How can I hold it? How can I make space for it? How can I give it room? Because when we make space for it and give it room, that's when we have the freedom. That's when we're able to not have to react to our situation. We can choose to respond in a wise, beneficial way, a healthy way, a way that doesn't cause harm to ourselves or to others. So there's a quote I want to read that I love. It's from a woman named Emily McDowell. And I'll close with this. Finding yourself is not really how it works. You aren't a $10 bill in last winter's coat pocket. You are also not lost. Your true self is right there, buried under cultural conditioning, other people's opinions, inaccurate conclusions you drew as a kid that became your beliefs about who you are. Finding yourself is actually returning to yourself, a remembering who you were before the world got its hands on you. Who you were before the world got its hands on you. So that is just a teeny foray into how you would begin to let go of the stories and cultivate a kind, compassionate response to who you are, and letting go of clinging, letting go of addiction, letting go of all those things. So I think that's all I have right now, and I believe there's there's some time for questions, and you can write them in chat if you know how to do that, or you can send them to Thomas, and he can put them into the chat room.
Thanks so much for that, Mary.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you.
Really wonderful. Yeah, does anyone have any questions? We have some time set aside to go over any questions. This is a really great opportunity to ask a Dharma teacher, any questions revolving around recovery or Buddhism. And you can either send them in the chat, or I can bring you on screen to ask a question.
Are you, I always want to maybe throw a prompt out there. Do you have, well, what I'm going to say, it's like, have you been able to identify your stories, or do you have trouble identifying your stories? Do you have you found your stories, but developed a fondness for them? Because even though they're unhealthy and not beneficial, sometimes we find it really hard to let go. So maybe you have some thoughts around that. Oh, got a question from Nikki, I see. Oh, there's another one.
Here, I can read
Thanks. Thanks.
Joanna's question is, I am getting confused about replacing negative thought patterns with positive, compassionate ones, but also being okay with myself as I am, including the negative thought patterns.
Yeah, thanks, Joanna. That's a good question. What comes up for me is the idea is that we have to start where we are and recognize that these habitual ways of thinking are ingrained. They've been there for a long time. And so the first step is just to identify them and to slowly, slowly, slowly begin to recognize that they're not serving us. And how do we set an intention to move away from them, and then slowly, slowly not practice them? I mean, sometimes we can do it more quickly, but if it's uh, uh, really deeply ingrained, it may take some time. So just recognize that this conditioning is not your fault. This negativity, these negative thought patterns, you didn't install them. Who's going to wake up in the morning and go, yeah, I'm going to be jealous today because it feels so good? We don't do that. It's just the way the mind is created to try and take care of ourselves. And so you just go, yeah, right now it's like this. And I'm making an attempt, I've set an intention to move in a different way, to do things differently. And we take responsibility. If we say, you know what, I didn't do that so well, okay, responsibility for that, totally. And my intention is still to move in a wiser, healthier, more compassionate way. It takes practice. It really takes a lot of practice. And I think another thing that might be helpful is forgiveness practice. There, to begin to offer ourselves loving kindness, begin to offer ourselves forgiveness in a methodical way. So that and
Okay, and Nikki wanted to come on and ask a question, so I'll invite Nikki to come on. Nikki, let's see. Okay, Nikki, I sent you a request to ask for a video.
Ah, thank you. Thank you, Mary. I'm in the UK, so it's the evening actually. It's 9:30. Yeah. So great. Thank you for what you said. And what I'm interested in is if you were talking about having these beliefs sort of about ourselves, these stuck in that
mm-hmm.
I'm guessing probably negative. This is like the negative sense of it. Now, how would you recognize that that was a belief that has run its course?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you done?
Well, I was kind of, because I was wondering if it was, I guess your behavior would be quite destructive, wouldn't it? So if your beliefs about yourself were fueling your behavior, then it would be quite, oh, they're so ingrained, aren't they? They're so ingrained. I know, and I've been in recovery a long time, and they're still so ingrained. I would be, I can't quite catch some of them. They're like elusive. They go past, and I can't catch them. Is what I'm saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
Thank you. Yeah, if the experience causes suffering or discomfort, then it's probably not wholesome, and we want to let go of it. Doesn't serve, it's not beneficial. That's always a really clear sign. If you said if the actions are destructive, it doesn't even have to be destructive. It can be much more subtle. Those are the ones, we get rid of the destructive ones, hopefully, first, and then we see more and more and more subtle. Just even our watching how we speak to ourselves. Wise speech, we do use that to ourselves. I used to call myself, stupid. Like if I was really tired and I couldn't remember stuff, I'd say, "Oh, you're so stupid." And somebody had to point out, "No, you don't get to say that to yourself." So it's really subtle baby steps. Really, just we've got our lifetime. We don't have to be done by October. Thankfully, we can do this the rest of our lives. So we just keep continuing. Wherever we find it's unpleasant, that's where we want to bring our attention to work on. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah. Any more questions?
I'm really good at people never asking me questions. My classes, nobody ever asks a question. It's not never, but it's always like.
Okay, I kind of have a question.
Sure.
It's one I've been thinking about for a while, actually. So when I learned meditation, I learned using like a book, or a friend taught me. I think there was like a book, and in the back of the book there was a little short instruction.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays we have apps on our phones that have 1 trillion meditations.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if there is a benefit to having one meditation and kind of sticking to it for a while versus just kind of picking meditations at random and doing different ones all the time.
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's the problem of abundance and technology. I would suggest sticking with one, and it's true for anything. It doesn't matter, mindfulness or whatever it is, but I think you need to stick with one practice for a while so you can really get into it. It's like any spiritual practice. Sometimes once it starts to get difficult, people pop over to something else. And to really have the impact, you really need to stick with it 6 months to a year. Say, all right, I'm just gonna hang out with this one and really see where it takes me. Because people get bored, and that's what we want the next thing. We want, oh, this isn't working. What's that? Oh, shiny. What's that? We have that really short attention span. And when it becomes difficult or boring or whatever I said, we want to move on. And it's like, no, you hang with it. You hang with it all the seasons. Whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, that's part of this practice. That's why we get into so much trouble, because we're always chasing the next thing. But it's like this one asks, no, hang out here. I suggest that highly. And then you see the benefit of it. And that's true with any practice we do. If we only do it until it's like, man, then we don't learn to play instruments. We don't learn to do anything because we're moving on to the next thing. So it's the same with meditation. Thanks for that.
Okay, anybody have any last questions before we wrap up today? I'll post the Donna link again. If you'd like to show support to our teacher today by offering what you can as dana or donation, your generosity can help to strengthen the recovery community and to grow the academy and be a practical expression of gratitude and metta. Many hearts have come together to make this event happen today, including yours. And let's see, oh, I already had it there. Okay. I just wanted to do a couple announcements. We have the Buddhist Recovery Network Summit going to be coming up September 5th through 8th. It'll be in Lacey, Washington. Registration opens soon. You can go to BuddhistRecoverySummit.org to find out more. There's going to be a lot of juicy topics we're going to be covering here. I'll post that as well. Mary, do you have any announcements or anything coming up?
I'm going to be doing a retreat in Big Bear in Southern California in August. And then I'm always doing stuff, so you can just go to my website if you're interested. So that's it for the moment.
Awesome. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas, for all your help and great work in getting this going and keeping us online and helping me with my sound. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I guess we'll close up, everyone. Thank you all for being here and your gift of your presence. Have a lovely week. May all beings be well and at ease. May we find what brings us peace and share that peace with our communities. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. See you next time.
See ya.